Steve, welcome to my studio. For nearly as long as I've played guitar, I've treated clean tone as not much more than a necessity. See, I'm a rock guy. I like fat, crunchy rhythm tones. I like big, soaring lead tones. So to me, clean was always just that thing I needed in between the real sounds. I needed a clean for funky, spanky stuff. I needed a clean for pretty, chorusy chord parts. And it did the job until I could get back to the real tones. But over the years, as I was playing with various bands playing various different styles of music, I needed my cleans to be more than just a utility tone. I wanted a tone that not only sounds great, but also feels great, that's fun to play on. A destination tone, like my crunch and lead tones. Now the bonus is that I can get a lot of mileage out of just this one tone. The same clean sound can handle tight, spanky rhythm playing, wide, chorusy, chordal parts, and bluesy, expressive single note playing. Now, keep in mind, clean sound exposes everything. Pick attack, dynamics, touch, feel, and most annoyingly, it exposes all the flaws in your playing. Thankfully, Fractal stuff gives us so many building blocks and tools that we can use, so building a great clean tone on here is easy. With so many options, though, can also come a phenomenon known as option paralysis. So here's what we're not doing. We're not building the clean around effects. We're not hiding problems behind ambience. We're not clicking and turning every little knob just because we can. Now, there are some ambient effects on here. I like delay and reverb, and sometimes it's a little shimmery. But the important part is this tone still works with the effects bypassed. I'll show you what I mean. Now, just like with the rest of the tones in this series, I'm not swapping the speaker cabs. This keeps things consistent across the whole preset. So I'm going to use the same IRs I used in all the other sounds. Also, as I've done in the other videos in this series, to avoid any confusion, I've broken this tone out into its own preset, which I'll make available along with my full continuum preset at my website, theguitarnerd.com. Okay, so before we start with the amp block, I've got a little bit of compression going into the amp. I'm using the Citrus Juicer compressor. This is a fairly new addition to the Axe FX 3. It's a model of the classic Dan Armstrong orange squeezer, which was one of the earliest compressor effects for guitar. If you've ever heard that old Dire Straits stuff or maybe old Doobie Brothers, then you've heard the orange squeezer. This compressor is also newly available on the FM9 with firmware version 11. I'm not sure if it's available on the FM3 yet. If not, it should be in the current beta and it'll probably be released shortly. Anyhow, I'm not squashing the sound real hard, just enough to round it off a bit going into the amp. The response is still very dynamic. This is with the compressor. And then this will be without it. So you can hear it, but it's not real strong compression. Okay, let's go over to the amp block. Now, one of the best clean tones I've ever gotten in my life was my 1970 Fender Bandmaster running into a 412 loaded with Celestion G12 EVH speakers. That amp quickly became one of my favorites, and it's sitting right here next to me. So imagine how excited I was when I got my Axe FX 3 and saw that one of the amps is a Fender Bandmaster. Now, the Bandmaster isn't a flashy amp. It's 40 watts, 3 knobs, volume, bass, and treble. And like most Fender amps of the era, can overdrive really nicely when you turn up the volume. We're going for clean here, but I do want a touch of edge to it. So I've got the gain, which is the same as the volume knob on the real amp, set to 4. I want the sound to be round, but not overly woofy, so I dialed the lows here to 6. The brace switch is engaged, and the highs are set to 3.5. Let's take a listen. I've turned off the delay and reverb, and I will turn off the compression so you can hear just what the amp is doing. Now, I want this clean sound to respond to how I play, not just sit there. And we can hear, even without the compressor in front, it's got a bit of punch and the notes already have a touch of bloom. Now remember, the Bandmaster only has 2 tone controls, bass and treble. I want this to sound fairly authentic, so here in the Ideal tab, I'm not touching the mids, the presence, or the depth controls, at least for now. Now, I do have the fat switch on because I like the little extra push it gives in the mids. I'll turn it off and then back on and you'll hear the difference. Now, the rest here is pretty standard. You'll notice the master volume over here in the Ideal tab, that's dimed all the way up. In the Fractal world, this is the default setting for amps where the real-world counterpart doesn't have a master volume, like the Bandmaster. Now, down here in the preamp tab, I've made a few small changes. First, I've switched the preamp tubes from the default Sylvania to JJ's. I'll switch back and you can hear the difference. To my ears, the Sylvanias feel a little bit softer. I'm looking for more of an immediate attack, so I went with the JJ's. Also, I brought the low cut up to 84.5 hertz to tame some of that super low end flub that can happen with this kind of amp. Now, down here in the Power Amp tab, I've changed just a couple of things here. I've bumped the negative feedback up a little bit to 3.5. The depth frequency is set to 150 hertz. I was experimenting here, but the depth control is off, so this doesn't make any difference. Now, if we go here to the Power Tubes and CF tab, I've made a couple changes. For starters, I brought the grid bias up to 70%. This is generally the starting point when I set the bias on my amps when I change tubes, and here, 70% sounds perfect. I've also bumped up both of the cathode follower controls. As I showed in my lead tone video, bringing up the compression here is akin to overdriving the cathode follower tube to cause it to distort. Again, we're not looking for a drive sound here, but the magic of tubes lies in their drive characteristics. That warmth helps to round out the tone. Likewise, the harmonics control just adds a little bit of that tube sweetness. Now, I didn't do anything in the power supply tab. To me, the sag feels about perfect as it is, so I left it alone. With these old Fender amps, impedance is really important. The Bandmaster uses a 4 ohm output transformer, and mismatching it can completely change how the amp responds. Now, I've experienced this with my real Bandmaster. It sounded great into an 8 ohm 412, but when I later converted that cab to 16 ohms, the amp lost headroom and just turned flubby and harsh. So this isn't subtle. Impedance directly affects feel and breakup. So I'm using the 212 double verb, which matches a similar 4-ohm Fender design. That's exactly what this amp wants to see. I've also got the speaker drive set to 1 just for a touch of realism. Now, I haven't done anything in either of the EQ tabs. To me, the sound coming out of the amp model sounds great, so I left it alone. Now, down here in that Dynamics tab, I have added just a little bit on the input dynamics, and I've also added a little bit of output compression to keep things fat and smooth. So, as you've probably figured out by now, I'm not a huge fan of dry guitar sounds. I like some ambience, so I like to use some reverb and delay on this sound. The reverb is the London Plate reverb. It's just a stock factory default preset, and it sounds like. I just think that's a sweet sound of reverb, especially for a clean tone. Now the delay is a multi-tap delay, and I'm using the Aurora delay type. Again, just using the default factory preset. And that sounds like this. So there we go. A simple yet effective clean tone that covers a bunch of different kinds of clean sounds with one basic tone. It's flexible, it's musical, and it's reliable. One clean sound that works for funky spanky parts, chorusy chords, and bluesy clean playing without needing to be rebuilt for each one. In the next video, we're going to take this same tone and push it into the more gnarly end of the spectrum, maybe even explore some drive pedals. In the meantime, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.